And you of me, sir? Said Lauvières, and we shall see then who can speak the loudest. Friquet and Ninette continued to shout, the cries, the noise of the shot, and the intoxicating smell of powder produced their usual maddening effects. Down with the officer, down with him, was the cry. One step nearer, said Comminges, putting down the sashes, that the interior of the carriage might be well seen, and placing his sword on his prisoner's breast. One step nearer, and I kill the prisoner. My orders were to carry him off alive or dead. I will take him dead, that's all. A terrible cry was heard, and the wife and daughters of Broussel held up their hands in supplication to the people, who was so pale, but who appeared so determined, would keep his word. They continued to threaten, but they began to disperse. Drive to the palace, said Comminges to the coachman, who was by then more dead than alive. The man whipped his animals, which cleared a way through the crowd, but on arriving on the quay they were obliged to stop. The carriage was upset, the horses carried off, stifled, mangled by the crowd. Raoul, on foot, for he had not time to mount his horse again, tired, like the guards, of distributing blows with the flat of his sword, had recourse to its point, but this last and dreaded resource served only to exasperate the multitude. From time to time a shot from a musket or the blade of a rapier flashed among the crowd, projectiles continued to hail down from the windows, and some shots were heard, the echo of which, though they were probably fired in the air, made all hearts vibrate. Voices, unheard except on days of revolution, where distinguished faces were seen that only appeared on days of bloodshed. Cries of death, death to the guards, to the Seine with the officer, were heard above all the noise, deafening as it was. Raoul, his hat in ribbons, his face bleeding, felt not only his strength, but also his reason going. A red mist covered his sight, and through this mist he saw 100 threatening arms stretched over him, ready to seize upon him when he fell. The guards were unable to help any one. Each one was occupied with his self-preservation. All was over. Carriages, horses, guards, and perhaps even the prisoner, were about to be torn to shreds, when all at once a voice, well known to Raoul, was heard, and suddenly a great sword glittered in the air. At the same time the crowd opened, upset, trodden down, and an officer of the musketeers, striking and cutting right and left, rushed up to Raoul and took him in his arms just as he was about to fall. "God's blood!" cried the officer. "Have they killed him? Woe to them, if it be so." And he turned around, so stern with anger, strength, and threat, that the most excited rebels hustled back on one another in order to escape, and some of them even rolled into the Seine. "Monsieur d'Artagnan," murmured Raoul. "Yes, Stith in person. And fortunately, it seems for you, my young friend. Come on, here, you others," he continued, rising in his stirrups, raising his sword, and addressing those musketeers who had not been able to follow his rapid onslaught. "Come, sweep away all that for me. Shoulder muskets, present arms, and aim." At this command the mountain of populace thinned so suddenly that D'Artagnan could not repress a burst of Homeric laughter. "Thank you, D'Artagnan," said Comminges, showing half of his body through the window of the broken vehicle. "Thanks, my young friend, your Nameth, I may mention it to the queen." Raoul was about to reply when D'Artagnan bent down to his ear. "Hold your tongue," said he, "and let me answer. Do not lose time. Comminges," he continued, "get out of the carriage if you can, and make another draw. Be quick, or in 5 minutes the mob will be on us again with swords and muskets, and you will be killed. Hold, there's a carriage coming over yonder." Then, bending again to Raoul, he whispered, "Above all things do not divulge your name." "That's right. I will go," said Comminges, "and if they come back, Fire! Not at all, not at all, replied D'Artagnan. Let no one move. On the contrary, one shot at this moment would be paid for dearly tomorrow. Comminges took his 4 guards and as many musketeers and ran to the carriage, from which he made the people inside dismount, and brought them to the vehicle which had upset. But when it was necessary to convey the prisoner from one carriage to the other, the people, catching sight of him whom they called their liberator, uttered every imaginable cry and knotted themselves once more around the vehicle. "Start! Start!" said D'Artagnan. "There are 10 men to accompany you. I will keep 20 to hold and check the mob. Go, and lose not a moment 10 men from Monsieur de Comminges." As the carriage started off the cries were redoubled, and more than 10,000 people thronged the quay and overflowed the Pont Neuf and adjacent streets. A few shots were fired and 1 musketeer was wounded. "Forward!" cried D'Artagnan, driven to extremities, biting his moustache, and then he charged with his 20 men and dispersed them in fear. 1 man alone remained in his place, gun in hand. "Ah!" he exclaimed, "it is those who waltzed have him assassinated. Wait an instant." And he pointed his gun at D'Artagnan, who was riding toward him at full speed. D'Artagnan bent down to his horse's neck. The young man fired, and the ball severed the feathers from the hat. The horse started, rushed against the imprudent man, who thought by his strength alone to stay the tempest, and he fell against the wall. D'Artagnan pulled up his horse, and whilst his musketeers continued to charge, he returned and bent with drawn sword over the man he had knocked down. "Oh, sir!" exclaimed Raoul, recognizing the young man as having seen him in the Rue Cicatrix. "Spare him, it is his son." D'Artagnan's arm dropped to his side. "Ah, you are his son?" he said. "That is a different thing." "Sir, I surrender," said Lauvières, presenting his unloaded musket to the officer. "And no, do not surrender. Egad, on the contrary, be off, and quickly. If I take you, you will be hung." The young man did not wait to be told twice, but passing under the horses had disappeared at the corner of the Rue Guénégaud. "I'faith," said D'Artagnan to Raoul, "you were just in time to stay my hand. He was a dead man, and on my honour, if I had discovered that it was his son, I should have regretted having killed him." "Ah, sir," said Raoul, "allow me, after thanking you for that poor fellow's life, to thank you on my own account. I too, sir, was almost dead when you arrived. Wait, wait. Young man, do not fatigue yourself with speaking, we can talk of it afterward." Then, seeing that the musketeers had cleared the quay from the Pont Neuf to the Quai Saint Michael, he raised his sword for them to double their speed. The musketeers trotted up, and at the same time the 10 men whom D'Artagnan had given to Comminges appeared. "Halloo!" cried D'Artagnan, "has something fresh happened?"